Hi, thank you so much to everyone for joining this masterclass with the MET Orchestra Musicians. I'm Claire Cunningham, CEO and founder of Lessonface, where we have been connecting students with music teachers for live lessons and classes online since 2013. Welcome to the 8th masterclass in this series featuring the horns. We will have 4 student performance and coaching sessions, followed by a brief Q&A, so please enter questions in the chat box or the Q&A panel if you have them, and we will address them after the performances. So we begin. And now Barbara Curie of the MET Orchestra will coach Maria D'Ambrosio of Boston, Massachusetts, who will play the first movement of the Mozart Horn Concerto No. 2.
Hi there. I'm going to do the exposition for you so that I can have the most time to be coached on that. And thank you very much.
It is so nice to meet you virtually. And I just have to commend everybody that's here doing this. I would have been very nervous to do this when I was a student. So just, playing in front of everybody virtually is strange and everything. And you sounded great. Your tempo was so consistent throughout. It was almost as if you had a metronome on, but you didn't. And that's one of the hardest things about Mozart is making sure that it's consistent throughout. Since we don't have a ton of time, I'm glad that you just played the exposition so we can just talk about articulation and consistency in articulation. And by that, I don't necessarily mean the length of the note, but I mean the start of the note. So sometimes you kind of slurred into a note, and I wasn't sure if you intended that or if it just kind of, sometimes it's a little easier to do that. So if we could just start at the top and then work our way down, I think that would be probably the best way to go. But like I said, you sounded great. Your trills were fantastic. For me, trilling from a G to an A is the hardest thing to do. It's harder than a C to a D for some reason. So that was excellent. So I would say in the very beginning, let's just see, where did I write? Okay. I think just be a little bit careful. So in the second bar, Da, ti, ta, ti, ta. Sometimes the beginnings of those notes, I couldn't really distinguish that that was a beginning and not just a slur. So it sounded a little slurry throughout, just that beginning intro. Do you want to try just one more time, just the beginning, and just make sure that you can really tell where the beginnings of the notes are a little bit? That'd be great. Good. So that was already a lot better. I wanted to just to say actually on the A in the second bar, that's one of the notes that it sounded like you were kind of slurring to. So that maybe just try it one more time, making sure that the A in the second bar is a little bit more distinguished. And could you try something also at the end of this phrase? Could you lengthen that D and the F a little bit? Just not doesn't have to be tied together, but just a little bum bum. So it's has a little bit more length. That'd be great. Yeah, that was better. I mean, even longer on the D and F. I think overall, I think one way that you can really elevate the level of this, for me, I don't know about you, but for me, whenever I play Mozart, I feel like it really depends on the day. Like, why was it going so well yesterday? And today it's the same piece, the same horn, the same player, and it's just not working. And so Mozart is very finicky, right? And it's so deceptively simple. It looks like anybody could play this. And in fact, when I was in sixth grade, I don't know about you, but I think I played through this, and it was just kind of terrible probably. But so what I wanted to discuss was how do you elevate this from going from a very advanced student level to somebody who's going to be playing this in an audition for a professional orchestra? And I think the thing that I would suggest to you is the word elegance. It needs a little bit more elegance throughout. And you can do that with lengthening some of these notes. It'll make it sound more mature, which is also nice. So I don't know, do you feel comfortable singing in front of people at all? Yeah. I think that's one of the best ways to really connect what you want to do on the horn with what is maybe happening a little bit. So, I'll go first. I'll sing the first line. Ta 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 tia ta da 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 bum bum. And so the end of that is a little longer, right? So when some of these endings that you have of these phrases sound a little bum bum, and that's totally fine. But let's lengthen them. So would you feel comfortable singing the first line? Okay, great. Okay. So you sang it short at the end. Let's sing it a little bum bum. Yeah, that's it. That is great. Now can we buzz it on our mouthpieces? So that's another step. So if you ever have any feeling of like, I just don't get it, I don't know, how do I make this more elegant? Barb said we should make it more elegant. What do I do? So sing it and then buzz it on the mouthpiece. So intonation was not so great, but you could probably do better than I can. Great, excellent. So can we try that now on the horn? The nice lengthening of the end of the phrase, okay?
Oh, I'm so sorry. I think you're muted.
Sorry, there we go. That was very much improved. Very, very much improved. And if you want to lengthen the last two notes even more, go ahead. But let's continue a little bit more. I would say your run up to the high B flat was excellent. It was very, very good. When you're in measure 34, those bum, 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 ba-da-lum, bum, 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 can you lengthen those as well? They were very punchy right now. So it was like bum, bum, bum. And I have to say, it reminds me of a lesson I had with Dave Crable, who was the principal horn of the San Francisco Symphony when I was maybe your age. And we discussed these two bars at 34 and 35 for quite a long time. And he said something about having an emotional map of the piece. And I thought, what is an emotional map? I have no idea what this is. So, so he told me. And basically, to have a feeling of where you want this to go. So in terms of, how you feel and in terms of what you want to express. So when you get to 34 and 35, can you tell me what do you want to express with these simple little 3 notes?
I would say it's very triumphant and joyous.
Okay. And can you sing that to me? Regardless of what the pitch is, just kind of sing the feel.
Bum, 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 bum.
Okay, so you sang it a little longer than you played it. So could you now, could you actually play just at 34 and 35 for me with a little bit these longer notes?
Sure.
There we go. There we go. That is it. That's great. Excellent. And now when we get into bar 36, again with the lengthening of the notes, this is going to really make your version, it's going to elevate it into something very mature and elegant. So let's start at 34 and continue to measure 5, 6, 7, 48. Okay, great. Sorry, I keep trying to mute myself and I think I'm forgetting to turn it back on. Excellent. This was a very much more mature than what you had played the first time around. So that was really great. Be careful in bar 41. You're kind of clipping the end of the second eighth note. So that's a very simple fix. Can you try it from the bar before that, from bar 40? That was a keeper. That was great. Excellent, excellent job. So now we're going into bar 45, which I don't know about everybody else on this panel, but this section to me is one of the most beautiful things written in, by anybody. It's, with Mozart, it's always so simple, right? It's always these simple little ideas. And, one of the benefits of working at the Met is that we get to hear these amazing singers singing Mozart. And they do this this thing when they have a moment like this where there's just a long note. That is the most magical thing you can ever imagine, where they just hold this note and then they maybe, sometimes they might add a little vibrato at the end or something, but it's the purest thing you've ever heard. And it's kind of like this section here at 45. And I would really highly recommend everybody listening here to listen to some opera singers, some amazing opera singers, and see what they do, especially with Mozart. That to me is going to tell you a lot about how to phrase and how to make these phrases really long and beautiful and elegant. So let's keep going at 45, if you don't mind, and really try to lengthen all these phrases. stop there. That was great. Very, very good. In bar 54, those eighth notes, could you make those a little bit short, but with a line over it, like so a dot with a line over it? So just kind of bum 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 bee dee da da bum 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 bum. So at 56, you can really keep it nice and short, like you had it. And be careful. Sometimes it still sounds a little bit punchy. Like for instance, bar 49. That's kind of what you're doing. Those F's are a little punchy right there. So keep those also a little bit longer. Bum, bum, bee, da, da, da. Right? So can you start at bar 49?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. No, wrong place. Sorry. 45. Good. Keep going.
Oh, sorry, even longer than that?
Sorry?
Oh, did you want it even longer than that?
No, that was great. That was great. Yeah. Keep going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I was just inspired.
Oh, I didn't do this.
Yeah. I was gonna say something, but I didn't want to interrupt. Yeah, a little bit more articulation on each of those eighth notes would be great. Just start the bar before that, please. Excellent. Very good. Yeah. I think when you listen back to this recording, and hopefully you will at least, you'll hear some of these things that we've been talking about lengthening the notes. But I think you're on your way for sure for doing that. So let's skip towards the end a little bit. Could you I really liked what you did in 70 and 71. The length of those eighth notes was really great. It's nice to hear a little bit of space where the eighth rest is. So that was excellent. Really, really good. Could you start in bar 79 and just play to 83?
Sorry, I didn't have each system number.
Yeah.
Start of that, sorry.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Bum, 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 bum.
Yeah, no, if you could start bar 79. Bum bum ba dee da 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 da. Nice. Very good. Very good. It's the hardest thing to keep that trill going for the exact right amount of time, and you did. It was pretty spectacular. If you can try to do this in one breath, this whole phrase, that would be excellent. Also, this is a very hard phrase to do. To get all the elements together is very difficult. I would say keep lengthening things as well. You kind of got a little bit short there with in bar 81 with the C's. Dun 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 da 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 dum be da 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 deem ba da 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 dum ba. That's kind of what you played, and I think if you can make it a little longer, that would be great. So let's try it one more time. Yeah, excellent, very good. I think my time is nearly up, so I just wanted to ask a little bit about you. I'm not even sure. How old are you, and what year are you in school?
So I am 23. I did my undergrad at Boston Conservatory, and I started a year of my master's at New England Conservatory. I took it all off of school during the coronavirus pandemic, and so I've been practicing at home and just doing recordings. So that's been what I've been up to.
Yeah, it's such a difficult time, and I think for the students, it's really important as much as possible to be able to play with somebody that together in the same space. So if you have any friends or anybody of any instrument that you can play with, that would be that's something that I find very important. So
Yeah, I've had such supportive teachers. I love my teachers, Gus Sebring and Rachel Tilden.
great.
One of my friends and I have been doing Bach duets in the Gainsborough Garage. So I'm very happy because the Garage staff have appreciated our playing and not kicked us out.
We're always very appreciative when people don't call the cops on us, yeah. Which I have had happen before. So yeah, they were nice. They were nice.
I really appreciate this.
Thank you so much for coming and playing for me. And I'm going to hand it over to Claire now. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And now Brad Gemeinhart of the MET Orchestra will coach Shen He of Catonsville, Maryland, who will play the Allemande from Cello Suite No. 2 by Bach.
Would you like repeats?
Yeah, I was going to suggest, how about you just play top to bottom with no repeats?
Got it.
Okay. Hi, Shen. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
So whenever you're ready. That was great, Shen. That's fantastic. Excellent low register. An excellent facility. So tell me a little about yourself first. Where are you from? Where did you go to school? And all of that.
Okay. I currently live in Catonsville, which is right outside of Baltimore. I'm taking a gap year due to COVID, just like Maria. So I just graduated from the Eastman School. So yeah, I'm just trying to keep on, working on getting my horn playing better, and that's why I signed up for the Masterclass.
That's great. Good. Yeah, so these cello suites are so interesting. I love working on these. This is actually something that I have sort of been spending a little time with various movements. I've had my students, most of my students are in high school, Juilliard pre-college, and I've even taken some younger ones, which is actually really fun. But these suites are so interesting, and I was looking at through this movement, and I sort of think of them like a puzzle. It's like putting the pieces of a puzzle together. Like, where do these lines go? What's happening here? Where's you know First of all, what's the emotional content? What's the character? Where are the peaks? Where are the valleys? And you did a really fantastic job of giving like a really convincing musical performance of this. Um, what do you think of? What do you think of when, like, what would your definition of Allemand be?
German. So it's just like the direct translation, I guess. But it's a dance. So I kind of tried to. Well, I think if it was a dance, it would be a little bit more in time, I guess. But I kind of tried to. There's a couple of interpretations I've listened to, and there was one that I really liked. There was a guitar interpretation that was really in time, and I really liked that. But I guess I kind of just I branched off of that. I think I started off working on this, trying to make it like super in time, like that guitar interpretation. But I kind of branched off on my own, so I guess it's not so much in time anymore. But
Yeah, it's a really interesting point. Considering that the Allemande is a dance, I wonder, and I'm no musicologist. I'm not into, I passed my music history courses, but that's about it. So, yeah. But I wonder if the interpretation of these suites has changed significantly from Bach's time. Whether that's right or wrong I don't think it really matters, because the music is music, and we play music for our current audience and for what makes sense in our current world, right? And whatever affects that is whatever affects that. But I was thinking about this, and I was trying to, and in fact I was playing it, and I actually play this. I mean, you were playing it in the original key, correct? Yeah, which is great. I learned these suites using the book that's transposed for horn. So it's up a fifth or something from what you actually played. It doesn't matter. But I was working on this and thinking, like, how can I make this more dance-like and a little less serious? And I was, it's interesting. I watch videos, like, you have access to so much more than I had when I was a student a couple of years ago, and so I was like looking around on YouTube and watching videos, and these pieces are so serious. I'm wondering if you can start this. And okay, so do you have the marking con grandezza at the beginning?
looking at the Wendell Haas edition too. So yeah.
Yeah. So what does that mean?
With grandly, like,
Yeah.
yeah.
There you go, like grandiose or grandly, something like that. All right, picture a Baroque dance, like one of those like formal balls that they show in, like, you've seen it in scenes in movies or whatever, that are always like seem so formal, but they're all like really out of control. With people drinking. Why don't you start this again and try to make it a little less serious, a little more fun, a little more dance-like. And I want to preface this. I'm not saying that your interpretation of this, there's anything wrong with it. It was absolutely spectacular. I'm just like, I want to like shift the thinking on this a little bit, just to see what happens. So give it a shot for like, maybe play the first half to the repeat sign, okay, and make it fun and dance-like, and sort of a grand dance, but like, this is like in that era. Think of it like what would be a type of dancing that would happen right now, like a dance party, a disco party or something.
All right, I'm picturing
That's
that.
a different era too, I guess. But yeah, but think of it as like the like fun thing that people go out and do. Mm-hmm. Okay, try that.
Okay.
Yeah, that was great. That was great. And there were probably a few places in there where you were like, "Wait, what do I do? How do I do this?" Which is totally fine. And maybe if you want to have, this is why I think of these as a puzzle. Like you've spent so much time working on this, and it's spectacular how you're playing it. So if you want to like switch things up and challenge yourself, take a whole different approach to it. And it might affect you might end up with different ornaments. You might end up with different peaks of your phrases. It might change everything, or it might not work at all, which is totally fine. But it's about the journey, and that's what that's what makes it fun, like discovering this and looking at it different ways. Yeah. So and then about you had mentioned. I'm going to find the guitar version that you're referring to. I'm interested to hear that.
I think it's in the original key, but it's some of the sustains are not as easily done on guitar, so there are some bass lines added to the bottom, which I thought it's just really interesting hearing how different instruments kind of overcome certain barriers to do their own interpretation while also honoring the original as best as they can. So
that's right. So I mean, it's the same. We a lot of times will learn these suites and listen to cellists play it, but we can't sound like a cello. I mean, we can sound kind of like a cello, but there are different limitations to our instrument, and number one, we have to breathe. Right. So, your point about staying in time, I think that and you did it really beautifully. But using the musicality, using the phrasing in order, like stretching things in places where you need to fit in a breath, doing it in a musical way. It's a really important part of playing the horn, like working in the use of your air and the breathing in a way that makes sense musically, right? Mm-hmm. So where was there are several places, but let's use it as an example. Can you start now? I don't remember specifically where you took breaths, but why don't you start the second half? You can play it however you would like to play it. You don't have to do my silly, make it fun thing for this purpose. I want to hear. Sorry, go ahead.
I think currently my breaths feel a little disconnected from the music, and I think I need to kind of work on getting it to fit the music. I feel like I'm taking breaths because I need them, not because, well, yes, but I think they should also somehow fit with the style of the music. And I think right now some of them are really out of desperation. So
yeah, where's a place? Why don't you pick a place that you feel like you're having to sacrifice the musical line to take a breath?
I could just start from the beginning of that second section and keep going
Okay.
because it's really, I think it's really right at the beginning actually.
Okay. Yeah. That's a difficult passage, breathing wise. I feel like no, I feel like you're taking breaths. Have you transferred the breath marks from the Wendell Haas edition to this part?
Trent.
I mean, did you copy
I'm
or
actually
breath marks?
using the edit.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So
They're in there. Yeah.
they're in there. So I feel like you're taking breaths because they're marked there. I think you could
Leave that
rethink
to-
actually where you're taking the breaths. So for example, in bar 2, at the end of bar 2, right after beat 4, I actually don't think you need that. And I think you can get through it by coming down a little bit dynamically, a little bit more at the beginning of bar 2 there, and pacing your crescendo a little more slowly. So like take your time building. That's a really long, I mean, it seemed like how you're approaching, you're doing like sort of a long build through that. I think you can pace that a little bit more in a way that will actually, it works musically and it'll conserve air. So let's start by just skipping that breath at the end of bar 2. And the next breath you need to take, can you try making it all the way to the end of bar 3?
Okay.
So, do you know what I mean? So skip those 2 breaths. Breathe right on the bar line before bar 4.
Oh, okay.
Okay? Try that, but try to phrase into it in a way where it works kind of musically. Give it a shot and we'll see what happens.
Oh, sorry.
Were you out of air or was it just weird not to?
Kind of. I was kind of out of air by the time I got to about
Yeah.
halfway through the.
Okay.
I could just take a better breath at the beginning of measure 2, though.
Yeah, I feel like you could have taken a better breath, and I also feel like you could have come down a little bit more in dynamic wise and stayed at that piano dynamic level a little bit longer.
Okay.
Okay, so take your time before you start crescendoing. Okay, I'm going to get back. We're almost out of time. I'm going to get back to the breath thing in a second. I'm going to make fun of myself a little bit, but can you try the last bar and finish the last bar all forte, have a grand ending to it, okay?
Okay.
Like drive through to the end in a very grandiose way, I guess.
All right.
Okay, yeah. You can experiment with that. I don't know. I kind of like that. Although it's open to interpretation, obviously. But it's another way to think about it. Back to where I told you to breathe. I don't think it worked. I think it was a silly suggestion. But the point is, there's maybe another way to think about getting through that phrase, and you don't have to be tied to the breath marks that Bach most certainly did not write. you know. So there's if there's a passage where you feel like you're having trouble with that exact thing, number one, think about the musical line, right? That's most important. But don't sacrifice good air support and good tone quality in order to get through it, just to maintain a musical line. Work in the breaths as part of the musical line. And if that means breathing in different places or adjusting, I find that I adjust my dynamics a little bit in order to help out with the pacing of the air. And sometimes it works really well musically and air-wise. So just something to think about. So, okay, fantastic. You sound awesome. It was really nice to meet you, and I hope to see you again, hopefully in person.
And now Anne Scher of the MET Orchestra will coach Stephanie Fritz, a student at Yale School of Music, who will play the first and second movements of Concerto in C minor by Franz Strauss.
Hi, I can play just the first movement for time or both, whatever you want to hear.
Hi, I am not seeing you right now on my screen. There we go. Excellent. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
So just tell us, I'm sorry, what did you ask me? Like I
just said I can play just the first movement for time, but I have both.
Sure. I think that'd be great. Let's start with the exposition especially. Yeah. And I just wanted to say really quickly, tell us a little bit about yourself before you start playing.
I'm Stephanie. I am from Pennsylvania. I just graduated from Rutgers University in the spring, and I'm in my first semester at Yale. And I'm excited to have a chance to play for people outside my school.
Great. Okay, so start with the exposition and we'll go from there. Beautiful. Really lovely playing. Yes, I loved your sound. I liked how you approached this as if it was in two. It has a nice movement. It feels like you're moving forward. And I just love your sound. It sounds very beautiful. I guess I would say, thinking about the first movement, I mean, this exposition, what is the architecture? Where is the climax of this first section for you?
I think for me, the A flat.
Yes.
I would say that, yeah.
Yes, I think that could be maybe even bigger than what you did. It was really well done, but it could be even bigger. And I like how you changed the mood on the D, the line before. So that was really beautiful. And that brings you back down, so you have somewhere to go, which I thought was excellent. Let's work a little bit. I was just thinking about the scope of the whole thing. So it's good to know that you feel that's the climax, which is excellent. Let's work a little bit, as long as we're talking about the climax, and then I want to go back to the beginning. Yeah. Why don't you start with that D? And I want just slightly, you're playing so beautifully, but I want slightly longer phrases. Sometimes the breaths would kind of interrupt the way I think that you want to play it. Like, for example, after you got to the A flat, there was like a big gap and it felt like a little bit of a next section. So let's try and make longer phrases. And why don't you start with that pianissimo D that we were talking about? You just gave me goosebumps. That was so exciting. And I felt like emotionally, you really took me somewhere. You started with this sadder mood at the beginning, and you really got more heroic. It was beautiful. And the phrase was longer, and there wasn't that gap. It was really exciting. Thank you. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning and apply those same concepts. I felt like there was a bit of a gap on the second measure, for example. Like, let's make a longer phrase. Where are you going with this first phrase and the second phrase? Yeah. Let's think about that before you start playing. How about the first phrase? Where do you think your peak is for that phrase?
I want to say the fourth measure of my playing, but...
Yes, it's almost like a part A, and then there's a part B. I'd say, of a longer phrase, right? I would say the whole line, the whole first line, the A and B together, go to da 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 da, like to there. At least that's my personal feel for it. And then we do the same, basically, kind of the same phrase again, but more interesting the second time. Why don't you start that? Start the first phrase at the very beginning and think of a long phrase. And then in the second phrase, apply the same concept. I want slightly longer phrases. You're playing so beautifully, but there are a little bit of like beautiful little mountains, but I kind of want a bigger landscape. Great. I was thinking, in the interest of time, would you like to go on to some of the other parts? Because I think you have the idea that I'm going for, which is like longer phrases and basically an architecture of each section. So yeah, why don't you go on to the second part? Great. Beautiful. More excellent playing. All right. So this next section, where do you think the whole 4 lines goes? Where is your peak of that particular mountain?
I feel like it's like a phrase and then a phrase, but then it just randomly gets quiet and like kind of serene.
Right.
It just keeps, I feel like it all leads to that deceptive cadence right before like the whole last section. Like it just gets, farther and farther away from where you think it's going to go.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I personally think I would go the overall arching, well, it's hard to say, but I think this does all lead to the G on the last line. That's my personal take on it.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm just thinking about that. Also, like with the first 3 notes, I just heard a little bit of like, I want to hear more of the line in them, you know? And I felt like you backed off on the air. So I would just like, I don't know, just like carry through. My first one wasn't so great, but the second one is more what I meant. Why don't you try that? Just the first 3 notes again. That's better. That's better. Now try let's see. Try the next 3 on the C. Okay, do it a little bit more connected, right? You know, and then going on. More of a ring.
What?
Yeah, more like a ringing, beautiful. Like keep the air going through it. You know what I'm saying? All part of the phrase. Nice, nice. Okay, so now let's go back to the beginning of that section, back on the B flat, and make it all one phrase. I mean, your technical ability is awesome and beautiful. So just make it all one phrase.
Sorry.
Sorry, my computer's dinging and I don't know how to turn it off. I apologize.
Okay.
Yeah, try the C again.
Yeah.
Nice. But like I kind of let down after the E flat. Bum 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 dun 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 dum dee da da dum. You know what I'm saying? So go through that phrase. Try the second one again. Good. And then you got the whole mood change with the next one. Why don't we, since we have a little bit of time, I would love to hear the animato. I have a feeling you're going to be just fine on this. Yeah. So are you remote for school right now?
I was at school and then I moved back home just for personal reasons. But yeah.
Yeah, that's hard. So do you have anyone to play duets with, for example? I thought Barb's suggestion was great.
Yeah, I actually am at my boyfriend's family's house, so we play horn and piano stuff together.
Oh, that's great. That's
Yeah,
fantastic.
very, very lucky.
Good. Yeah, that's very important. Awesome. All right, why don't we try the animato when you're ready.
Oh no. Sorry.
Well done. No, there's a lot of great stuff in there. Okay, so I was thinking with this one, what I would recommend is, do you record yourself and listen back?
Yeah, I do.
Oh, good. Great. I encourage students to do that because you can teach yourself so much just by listening and going, wow, sorry about the dinging, everyone. Sorry about that. I just don't know how to turn it off. Yes. So let's see. So record yourself. So there are a couple of things that you would probably catch on your own if you record this section. It can sound a little bit like a lot of notes. So we need to think about the architecture again, and make them it easy. I think it should sound like elegant and easy. This is Franz Strauss, as you know, I'm sure, is the father of Richard, but he was composing during the Romantic period, but he really believed in classical composition. His compositions are like a melody with a very simple orchestration underneath, right? So in a way, this is kind of like, you want it to sound light and easy like Mozart, a little bit more, I would say. It sounded a little like da 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 da, a little bit too like So I think you want it to sound easy, elegant, and again, architecture of the section. Where do you want to go with this whole thing so that you feel like you take us somewhere, like take us on a journey? Where do you think the climax of this whole thing is? It's good to dissect it,
Yeah, I think definitely the first high B flat, just getting that. Well, actually.
Yeah, that's actually, go ahead.
Well,
keep going.
That almost feels like the whole, and then the next four measures are all just like,
yeah.
B flat, and then I don't know, but then honestly the last note is also the whole thing. It's very, yeah.
I know what you're saying. Sometimes it's a little hard to say, like to tell, but I think yes, the whole part is going to that first B flat, but then I think the real climax of the whole section is the F. That part, like, as the whole overall climax. So why don't you just start it again? Just trying to make it sound easy and light. We'll just do a little bit at the beginning.
Yeah.
So why don't you try that again? And keep that two feeling that you had in the beginning. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? It just makes it a little bit more elegant.
Yeah.
Now back down. Yeah, now so we have somewhere to go. Start really piano. That was awesome. That was really exciting. And I felt like you took me somewhere with the whole the scope of this section was excellent. When you're listening to yourself, I think it'd be nice if you could work on a slightly lighter articulation. It just sounds a little like, ah! It's a little bit too hard for me. I love that it's clean. That's excellent, but it seems a little aggressive. Do we have time? I'm not sure for a little bit of the next section. Claire.
We're basically at time.
Okay. Well done, Stephanie. You sounded beautiful. Really fantastic, Brian.
And now Eric Rolski of the MET Orchestra will coach Leanne Attia, a student at the Peabody Institute, who will play the first movement of Mozart Horn Concerto No. 4.
Hi. Can I play the exposition? Just the exposition?
Great, just the exposition then, that's fine. If you like, if we want to go through the development, I think there's time for that too. It's up to you.
Okay, I prepared the exposition, so I'll play that.
Okay, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Bravo, great, nice job. Yeah. It's not easy to do live on the internet, but here we are. Yeah, no, a lot of terrific things happen here. Great control. You seemed always, right on top of it. And so much of what you, I think, intended to put out there musically, came through across the internet, which is also not easy to do. We have layers of microphones and internet signal between us. And so, sometimes I have to say to my students here on, online about, you're in the room with you. Did it sound like enough contrast? But I heard, plenty of contrast there. We could talk about some of the subtleties and some of the other things. But, before we get into that, let me just say one thing, because as horn players, we have this wealth of masterpieces by Mozart in our repertoire. And, it's really, a treasure trove for us. And at the same time, we don't have the size of repertoire as pianists and violinists. And so these Mozart concertos, we end up playing, and we learn them when we first start studying the horn, maybe with the first concerto, third concerto, making our way through them by the time you get to college, and then you play them at all your auditions. And I often say to my students, it's like, you'd almost have to come in on a unicycle playing this perfectly juggling fire to really make an impression. Sorry, someone just came through the room. To make an impression that sort of wows people. It's Mozart. It's elegant. It's more subtle. Yes, it's not Strauss. It's not Mahler. So developing this great style for Mozart, I think is key. And I know for a lot of horn players that makes us feel sort of backed off into a corner. You're playing this with a straitjacket kind of. And so let's get started with I didn't feel like necessarily you were, but there are places I think I would encourage you to do a little bit more. And let's talk about, again, that when you're trying to make an impression as soloist on a concert with this well-traveled piece, and certainly when you play it for auditions, you're playing it so often for horn players, right? And, we all learned these pieces, before we got to college. We all worked on them through college. We all auditioned for them. We all teach now. We hear them, dozens of times, maybe it seems almost each week. So, we've got to make the most out of everything here without turning it into something that it's not too, so being true to Mozart. And the first thing that I say that I loved about your opening was I thought it was a great example of really classical style, classical style being like classical architecture. There's a symmetry that they valued, in this period in music, just much like, in architecture and other art forms. And think about any classic Greek temple or, US government building, this, traditional, a symmetry about it. So you have this two-part thing of dee-da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-da-dum sort of question, and dee-da-dum, da-da-da-da-da-dum. So it's that balance, half and half. That came through beautifully. Would you just give us the opening again, just, for the sake of demonstrating that idea? Good, very elegant, and I'd encourage you almost maybe to end the very end of it there, more of the answer. The first one had that nice da-da-dum sort of diminuendo, leaving us up in the air, what's going to come next, and then da-da-dum, da-da-ba-ba-ba-bum, because you're handing it back to a big tutti in the orchestra, bum-bum-bum-bum, da-ga-da-ga-dum-bum, and fullness of the orchestra. So I think you could hand it back a little stronger and show us, again, the balance here of question, answer. So just try that again. Good, good. And just don't be in a hurry, that you can leave that hanging. Da-da-dum, dee-da-dum. Don't be in a big hurry to move ahead. I know it's Mozart, and it is true. If you're playing this for anybody, sometimes, audition panels have, maybe non-horn players are on there, string players, conductors, non-musicians, conductors. But no, anyway. And so one thing that anybody can tell is just, are you in time? And Mozart, you have to be precise with time, but it almost feels musically a little hurried of da-da-dum, dee-da-dum. You're going on to the second half that time. But no, that was great. Nice, strong ending. Going on to the next bit here, we got these three long notes, the whole note, half, before we start really moving again. And the accompaniment, what's going on underneath this?
Eighth notes.
Eighth notes, right. And it's really just chord, chung, 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 chord, same chord, 3 measures in a row. So it's up to you here to make somehow these 3 notes magical. And that's a tall order. So personally, I like to think of the eighth notes as the engine that drives not just the rhythm here, but what can drive any shape we make in terms of ebb and flow of the tension of music here. So use those eighth notes that are behind you in the orchestra or the piano, and thinking, and if each eighth note just picks up a little more intensity, we travel, and suddenly it's not three long notes, but a sweeping line, and that's what we're looking for here. You know, we had all the energy, you know, the introduction. You had your opening little statement. The orchestra came back in. Bum 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 bum. Simplicity here, and the beauty of this simple line. Would you try that now? Great. Now let's do two things I wanted. One is technical. We want to start this with a gentler attack. It sounds, you know, a little heavy-handed, and it's hard. You know, you want to take a full breath, and at the same time, you want to come in with small air. So it's the feeling of like you take a nice breath and then you hold back, and that's not a good feeling. That's tension, right? So let's try this. Take your inhale, and you will fill up, I promise you. But think of it as a diminuendo shaped breath. So it ends with small air, and then you come back in with sound with small air. You just try that, and it might take you 2 beats to breathe. So like 1, 2. Almost. Try again. That was good. Nice and soft. That was good. Great, great. Now, second thing. Uh-oh, look out. He's going to play. All right. Next bit, I want you to play these eighth notes. And I want you to play them with that feeling of, all right, we have a big volume dial here, and it goes from 1 to 100. And I want this to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and so on. So, and just gets us right to the top, all right? Okay, the first measure, if you don't mind my saying, the first measure seems like it started to take off and then it sort of sat flat. At the risk of maybe you might end up too loud at the top of this, try it anyway. We can always do less, but so often, I think most of us, when we get recordings of ourselves and we're so proud, we thought, oh, that concert went great. And you listen back and it's like, it was a little flat, you know, it sounds too much the same. Very accurate, but not as exciting as you felt behind the horn. So go ahead and don't forget, as performers, we got to exaggerate. Oh, that's great. Now, play it as whole notes. And I want you to feel that tug, that push, that engine dynamically. Mm-hmm. The eighth notes are going to drive us to the top here. And just now fill that in with air, solid air. Great, great. And finish the phrase. We got to go on with some more of this stuff. It's great. So same thing again. And don't forget the diminuendo shaped breath. Try to do it rhythmically. Think 1, 2, breathe less, and then start. So big, little, start. Great. Okay. A lot of excellent stuff happened that time. One thing I noticed that an improvement over the first playthrough we had, that there were moments, and I think it's probably just shaking off the nerves and hitting your stride now. There are connecting notes that are important that weren't so connected the first time, and they were this time. Case in point, dee da da da, this note stopped, and then we got da da dee da da da, and it made it one phrase into two. And I think this time it had the beautiful connection, da 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 dee da 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 dee da da, and went right into the eighth notes. All right, so great airflow on that. A suggestion, and this is merely a suggestion, but an example that even if you didn't agree with me in this particular spot, something that you can apply though, and one should ask themselves when preparing a Mozart concerto. Since we don't have the dynamic range and drama of Strauss II or Glier concerto or some late romantic work for horn, it's Mozart. Yes, we can only get so loud, you know, you can get strong, but not orchestral fortissimo loud. That would be inappropriate, right? And we have the strictness of time. We can't sort of tug and pull on the tempo here like you could in Glier concerto. Glier concerto would sound silly if we did it metronomically, but it's Mozart. So, you know, we are a little bit in a narrower box in terms of expression, but within that box, one of the great things that we can rely on, and not just, you know, a bigger dynamic range or a push and pull elasticity of time. One of the things that we should use, and if we listen to some of our colleagues play their Mozart concerti, particularly string players, violin, I would say. I always think of the violin concerti, Symphonia Concertante for violin and viola and orchestra. Masterpieces, all of those. And they all happen to have great orchestral horn parts too, I should say. Challenging, but listen to them play, and it's the variety of articulation and different things that you can do with the bow, vibrato too, but really just the bow strokes that turn something to lighter versus, you know, very connected and sustained. So you look at this phrase we just ended with of a little touch like that just spices it up and makes it, I think, very much Mozartian in a way. But it's again, you made a beautiful phrase shape-wise, but it's all sort of ends up being one color. And I think this is what sort of makes Mozart, you know, it's full of expressiveness, and he changes moods quite suddenly and radically. So you have this sort of, you know, singing very serious, then playful all of a sudden. So these are things that you can dig into a little bit more. Let's go on and discover some more. Why don't we pick it up at 56, up there arpeggio. Go on, yeah, go on. This is good.
Sorry.
Great. Now let's work backwards here. You got another long series of footfalls here, half notes, but it's moving chromatically. And this time in the orchestra, of course, there's modulation involved here. And you know, if you, sometimes I have to force myself to sit and listen to horn recordings and not listen to the horn and try to listen to the other parts. And I would encourage you, if, you know, I used to be shy when I'd work with pianists, and I think, oh, I'm taking up their time, and you know, I'm just going to play through my thing once or twice, and then you're going to show up and hopefully do a good job of my jury, you know. But I've learned to sit down and say, the pianist is there to help me too, you know. I mean, and it's my concerto. I want to feel comfortable. So sometimes they have asked the pianist to play those chord changes from to hear those changes in your head, and you can hear as the harmony changes, of course, you know, as harmonies change, there can be mounting tension and resolution. You know, it's where we sort of feel back home and can more relaxed. So with that, I would love for you to just be a little bit more finding the line there. So and again, because it's an eighth note accompaniment. But it's also true anytime you, whether the accompaniment is eighth notes or not, find the subdivision in your long notes to hook up those subdivisions to your overall architecture of. Think of it as almost like those little connect the dot books you had when you were a little kid, and you know, 1 through 187. You did that with your pencil, connected them, and there was like this magnificent, you know, butterfly or something, right? So think of those dots now. Beam, 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 bum, 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 however you want to shape this, lead me right to where you want to go. So can we build that up, those half notes, into sort of something that drives to somewhere, leads me somewhere very clearly. I want to know exactly where that is. So. Good. Now, phrasing wise, I thought that was a little bit more interesting for sure, and a little more clear. Again, the one thing though that is interfering with that for me is a little bit of disconnect in your air flow when you move from one half note to the next. So that's why I also find that if I play a string of notes, eighth notes here. That's a great technical practice to get your air to move this way and just have the tongue slice through that rather than the air and tongue move together. And that leads to a vertical feel of beam, bum, if I restart my air for the next note. So if I think through it by playing actually. Right, so I'm trying to keep that air going, and so do that once by chopping this block of air, which is crescendoing, into eighth notes first. Great. Now you're in control of every moment. And if you want to turn this up a little bit and make it more thrilling or more intense crescendo, great. If you want to start the crescendo and start to pull back the other way, you can. You're in control now of the direction of every eighth note. Now connect them. This is now your pencil going 1 through 187, and there's the beautiful connect the dot picture, right? So put your air through all of those dots you just created. Nice. Do you feel more connected?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah. I just love this idea too, that if I know where the next eighth note is going, you know, intensity wise, volume wise, then my air follows through much better. Where if I start looking as this note and then there's this note, and I want this note to go to that note, it's a little hard to just drive through it when they're long notes. One tends to group their air, this note, then we blow the next note, rather than through. So this idea of using subdivision to create you know, you're laying out little pixels that are going to create a scene, right? And now you can create any shape you want, and you can go exactly to whatever note you want. And at the same time, we're keeping that trueness of rhythm because it is Mozart and we want to be accurate. I'm wondering if we're running out of time. I don't know, what is someone keeping time here? I'm not good at keeping time when I teach. I think we've been sort of at 20 minutes roughly.
We are about at time, and we do have a couple minutes for questions before we totally conclude. But yeah, thank you so much.
Oh, Lan, really, just a beautiful job. Really, everybody really sounded terrific today. I mean, you should all be proud of yourselves. It's really not an easy thing to do. You know, it's like a public lesson, and everybody really did so well. And I thought also listened and took the comments to heart, changed on the fly. Really good. So, questions?
Does anyone have any questions, or people that are watching the Zoom class?
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone who has questions, you can enter them in the chat or in the Q&A widget. And while we're pausing a moment for questions, I'll mention that we are currently accepting applications for upcoming masterclasses for advanced level performers for double bass, which that application period closes tonight at midnight, oboe, horn, and trombone. If anybody has questions for each other who are on the panel as well, that we'd still like to get answered. Oh, I see. We have a question, a very broad question from Terrence. What is life as an opera horn player like when we're not in a pandemic? I feel most of our horn education is centered around symphony orchestra. How does one prepare for opera auditions? How does one's year look like with opera houses not playing year-round? How does it compare to orchestra when a full run-through of an opera can be 2 to 5 hours long?
I think, Eric, we need to have a whole Met Opera Horns event about this. Great questions. I don't think we can answer them in 5 minutes, but I think that would be a great...
Who wants to take it first? Eric, I saw you about to jump in.
I'll answer a piece of it, and then it's a multi-part question here. So I'll just say, playing opera, I think compared to playing in a symphony orchestra, the biggest challenge is concentration. Because they are longer, and even with intermissions, and you can get rested up and tank up with some energy. Food and sugar, whatever, coffee but you jump right back in, and you're there till the wee hours sometimes, and it really is the mental game, and operas also, because symphony can get into a groove. Not that they, you can turn on the metronome and play them start to finish, but opera, it seems like there's never two measures in a row, the same tempo. So you've got to be always in the zone, reacting on a dime. So it's really the concentration is the big challenge, but for the length as well as for the flexibility of following singers it's a three-ring circus in opera. It really is. So it's not just the orchestra and the conductor leading this. There's a cast of a million on stage sometimes.
Yeah, I would.
Oh, sorry, Brad.
Oh, no, sorry. No, I just wanted to add on to something Eric said about pacing yourself. One thing that I find funny when we're playing particularly long operas is planning your meals. And we actually, backstage at the Metropolitan Opera, we have a cafeteria, and there are times when you figure out after you've been there long enough when you need caffeine. And then I'm going to eat my dinner at first intermission, and it's like, they're long nights. So yeah, that's it. Go ahead, Ann. There's quite a bit more to this, to answering this question, but
I was thinking about the audition part, and I think generally, like, obviously you need to listen to a lot of recordings because there is a lot of rubato and traditional rubato that happens in opera. Like Eric was saying, we are constantly reacting to the singers. We're listening really to their melody. They're leading us and we are reacting to them. So you have to really be on your toes. But that would transfer into the audition process because, you need to listen to a lot of recordings and figure out, oh, they take a lot of time there and it's usually done out of tempo. And that's exactly like that kind of thing. You have to really study and listen to recordings. I would recommend that.
Wonderful. So there is a question from Brooks. How do you structure learning a new piece?
Opera or just anything? I guess anything, right?
It's not specified. Yeah.
Not
So however you'd like to answer.
Well, Brooks.
Yeah.
Brooks is a student at Interlaken.
Oh,
So it's
okay.
wonderful that you tuned in for this. That's great. But go ahead, Eric. What do you want to say?
Well, you know, people have different thoughts about that. You know, I'm one who tends to go to a recording because, you know, it saves you a lot of time. I mean, it's some people don't want to have any preconceived notions based on somebody else's performance, and they kind of want to learn it from zero themselves and discover it all new for themselves. But I prefer to hear, you know, a recording to at least, you know, if I listen to 100 recordings, then it's like, you know, before I dig in on it myself, then I am doing myself a disservice. But if I at least get an idea, though, about what it sounds like as a complete piece. I mean, I'm looking at the horn part, but I'm not one of those musicians who can look at the full score and hear it in my head. So I get to hear that with, you know, if it's full orchestra or a chamber music piece or horn and piano even, I want to hear it together. I want to get a sense of, you know, what the piece is about then, you know, what's the style? Is it, how dramatic is it? How, you know, and then I get away from the recording. And then my imagination kicks in, I think, in terms of how I want to do it and how this moment, you know, it's very easy, even if it's my own performance, to listen back and say, oh, this could be more, you know, and this could be more exciting if we kept the soft dynamic down for a while or modified the tempo, played it faster, whatever it is. So as an artist, it's never good enough, and it's the constant discovery and creativity that I think that tortures us, and yes, it keeps it interesting. You know, it keeps you coming back to the practice room and saying, how could it be better still? So yeah, I start with the recording though, and then I start learning the notes.
I think also that somebody said here, Sarah Carson, that she's trying to learn a really hard piece for my age, and I totally get that. I was looking at some piece that my student was working on that was written for Sarah Willis, and it was this whole, I forgot the name of it right now, but it's really hard. And you just have to break it into very small, if it has to be note by note, you know, start there. And then if you can do 5 notes in a row, great. And then add the 6th one or add the next bar. I mean, it really has to just come down to the smallest thing. Don't try to learn the whole first movement in one go. Try to learn, you know, if it's technically challenging, if it's, you know, and like Eric said, it's like there's different ways too. Sometimes when we're at the Met, it's like if there's a new opera, sometimes it's either hard to find a recording if it's brand new, and then you just have to go to the rehearsal and knowing your part. And then as you rehearse, you kind of get to learn what to listen for. I think that's very important as well. And every time that you rehearse it and perform and all that stuff, you learn something new. So it's obviously it's an ongoing process.
I still learn hard licks 1 note at a time, you know, 2 notes. And when I'm ready, I have the 3rd note. But it actually, you can learn it almost at speed, you know, even if it's fast, you can go bop up, bop up, bop up, ba ba bum, ba ba bum, you know, and just keep, then add the next note when you're really ready. I do like learning hard things that way.
Yeah, I think we're accustomed to things being immediately fast with our phones and our computers and everything. And I think our brains actually don't process things quite at the same speed when we're learning music. So we have to remember to slow down a little bit. Learning something slow actually makes you learn it better than fast with mistakes. You know, it just doesn't work.
I see a question in the chat, the regular chat. It just says, how many auditions did you take before winning the Met job?
What do you go?
I probably took, I'm going to guess 20.
I
Maybe
think that's about right for me too.
16, 17, something like that.
Stops along the way, you know, where you stop. And I played in Spain for a while, and then I moved back to the States, and I played in Columbus, and that was a better place to take auditions from, Columbus Symphony, because it was more central in the U.S. But it was about 20.
I'll see your 20 and I'll raise you 18. I think I got 38 or some 36 under my belt. I don't know, but you know, I mean, I think I also set the record for a number of jobs. Just
yeah. You
there's
won
about 10 or 12
Philharmonic and the Met and then LA Phil.
well, in Vancouver, and there's a lot of early jobs I had too, and some auditions I won, I didn't take the jobs, but so there's a 10 or 12 wins in there. But it's a skill, learning to play auditions. It is, just learning the horn and learning the rep, but then how to do that solo on stage, and make excerpts sound like something complete unto themselves. Hard.
Yeah, I was lucky and got the Met job very early, so I didn't have too many auditions. I had maybe 4 or 5 or something like that. But just to plug something, my brother and I, Thomas, are going to be on the horn circle in about 20 minutes. And just a contrast, Thomas took, I don't know, 60 auditions, and like Eric, he's had a lot of jobs. And I was very much on the opposite end of things. So it was it's kind of interesting how our journeys are just whatever they are.
Yeah. Well, I've always thought it's interesting, what it's like to start in an orchestra virtually. For Barbara, started professional life in an orchestra of this quality must have been intimidating. Where I had the kind of career where I moved up incrementally up the ladder, and each step was kind of like a good preparation for the next step. Where standards went up, and
it was intimidating. I mean, I spent a year playing in the Jerusalem Symphony in Israel, and I was hired on third horn, but the first horn player allowed me to play first horn a lot, so I was playing principal horn a lot. But that was my only real experience. And honestly, prior to that, I played violin from the age of 5 through 18, and I did mostly youth orchestra. I played violin until senior year in high school. So I really didn't have a lot of experience playing horn in orchestra until the Met. And I mean, it was really scary. It was like everybody knew what they were doing except for me. For years, I felt, I still haven't figured it out. I'm joking. I've kind of figured it out.
Start taking it early. I recommend that. I started my sophomore year in college. I was like, you know what? I need to know what this is about. And it helps your practice. It helps you figure out what you need to figure out about yourself, and I need to get better at playing for people,
I think take every audition you can, because, and it sounds sort of like one of those dumb cliches, but every time you practice an audition, you've won, whether you win the audition or not. If it made you a better player, the process you went through and you dug deeper and got to a higher level, you've won something, and something that you can don't give that up. Then you start the next audition at a higher place.
It's very true. And if you do more auditions, you start viewing them as learning experiences and not things where you have to win, like winning the lottery. And then that's way too much pressure. If you just view it like, let's see what happens today. I'm going to try my best and do everything I can to get to the spot where I need to be super prepared mentally and horn playing wise. If you just view it like a learning experience, you don't have that same pressure quite as much. I remember Anne playing for a Masterclass before the third horn audition at the Met, and I was a student at Juilliard, and I was so in awe of her preparation. It was like, oh my God, she's so prepared for this. Wow. So that's the other thing, is you over prepare. Definitely.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Again, I know we have one more question. I also understand that a couple of folks do have a hard stop that they need to leave for. So yeah, I'll say thank you to everyone who participated in this. And if anyone can stick around and answer the question of how do you play faster, I understand there is a question from Sarah on that subject.
I actually have to go, and I play low horn most of the time, so I don't know how to play fast. I'll let Eric handle this one.
Thank you, Barbara.
Well, I think for me, I started off, the approach to that was, old school, put your number on 12, and then 2 years later, you're up to like 80 finally on a passage. And that works, certainly, or maybe from 12 to 180, you get there eventually. But like I said, if you're patient enough, that can work. But I subscribe to what we were just talking about earlier. You could take a passage that's fast, but start from where you can succeed. And that's my mantra about everything. When I sit down in the practice room, no one likes to go to the practice room and feel defeated, right? So I'll take something that I can't play and simplify it. How can I get through at least something and succeed at it? And so I'll just take a fast passage that might be a run of fast 16th notes, you know, digga, 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 right? And I'll just go, ba-dup, ba-dup, ba-dup. And you get used to seeing two notes at fast speed that doesn't seem as fast anymore. You know, I always say it's if you were sitting in a race car, you know, that, you know, with a professional driver that's used to doing these races, you know, where they average 200 miles an hour, everything would be going by in a blur, and it'd be scary as you could imagine. But to that professional driver who's used to going that fast, he sees it in slow motion compared to you and I. And so if I go da da, and then da da dum, da da dum, you know, and I see three notes, 1, 2, 3, and once I get really solid on those three notes, then you add the fourth, and you can concentrate on just from note 3 to note 4 because you know 1 and 2 so well, and before you know it, you've strung together this passage, you know, and you actually get there. I think faster in terms of the time it takes to learn that passage, and you learn it really thoroughly because you've learned from one note to the next and really focused. And so that when I go back and play the passage, it's not this blur of notes anymore. I'm seeing it like the professional race car driver. I'm used to going 200 miles an hour now. And I don't get that feeling when I start with the metronome at 12 and get to 200 a year later, because I haven't really spent that much time at the top speed here. But learning at day one, almost full speed is good, because then, you know, you begin to, like I said, control it, and just have to be very disciplined, making sure that, you know, you're not rushing it and that it's really even and very rhythmic, because that's the key to playing fast too, coordination, right? So when you're mixing slurred and tongue fast notes, beware, because slurs tend to be like a sheet of ice. Instead of da 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 dum, you know, if you tongue it da 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 dum and you slur tongue two, da 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 dum, suddenly they're not evenly spaced, you know. So you get that da da instead of da 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 da, 4 evenly spaced notes. So you've got to just learn it carefully and learn it one note at a time, is what I would say.
Makes sense to me. Well, thank you so much, everyone, again. I hope you will join us for our next master classes, which are bi-weekly on Sunday afternoons. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your Sunday, and stay well.
Thank you, everybody, who participated, really, and bravo to
these. Sounded great. All of you.
Terrific. I understand why they were selected.
Thank you. Keep practicing.
Yeah, keep practicing. That's right.
All right, I have to go.
Okay.
Bye, all.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.